in from.
Oh, I see 34
Everybody else,
participants.
yep, everybody else, you guys can drop in where you're from and we can roll with it.
If you guys put questions in the chat, it may take me until the end to answer them because I'm a horrible multitasker.
I can
But
watch.
yeah, Linton's okay. Good. Linton can watch for that. That's what I need.
Yep, that's right.
Who's
Okay,
gonna read?
people are answering.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, I'm ready. I guess we're all ready. Thank you. So I'm Jay Shafer. Back in 1999, April of 1999, I finished building my first house on wheels. And I put out a book about the merits of smaller houses, how efficient they are, and it was also about how laws prohibiting small, efficient houses suck. That stuff went viral pretty quickly. It started turning up in the media. Other people began building little inspiring houses of their own. We all became friends, formed a united front, and that front became the tiny house movement. I should mention here that I've introduced myself. Linton there behind me is actually a friend of mine who I'm building a house for, much larger than the ones I'll be talking about today, a massive 12 by 24 feet. So conveniently, he also understands how to use a computer. So the tiny house movement really got going very quickly, and by 2000 it was in a lot of media, and therefore just self-perpetuated thereafter. That's my house in the photo. That's at least it looks like the first one. It's actually the second one, but for all intents and purposes, we'll call it the first. Today I'll be describing how to construct a very affordable, very easy to build house. In fact, I'll be talking about a few ways to vary that process, and they're all very affordable. They're all under $5,000 and can be done pretty quickly. I'll say right now that the house I'll be describing doesn't contain a bathroom or kitchen, but I'll get to how to add that on at the very end. Okay, so this picture here. Yes, this picture is of D. Williams, Greg Johnson, and I. Me, and we, that's up in Dee's loft. We were close friends from the very get-go. In the beginning, it was just a few people, a handful of people, maybe the three of us, and then a few more joined after that, and then, well, a few million after that. So it's been a very bonding experience. We've gone through a lot together. I love these people. So my first, I should mention this because this is the theme of the day. Do I do this?
Sure, you want to go down one?
Yeah. Oh, thanks. The theme of today is the future of tiny houses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that subject as well at the very end. And it's pretty significant. I feel like it's very similar to what it's always been, but it's kind of amping up at this point considering the current political environment. Push this.
You can use this down there, I think.
Oh, down.
No, I'm sorry. I guess we have to be over here. Move the mouse and then it's because the chat window's open. Okay, just clicking.
This is the first image of a tiny house on wheels to appear in the media. It's before I knew how to use Photoshop, so I actually just took a picture of my house about 10 minutes after it left the spot where I'd been building it. And the scenery wasn't so great, so I just cut out that picture with scissors and taped it to a picture of the Swiss Alps. Shaded underneath with a pencil, and there you go. The beginning of photoshopping tiny houses, part of my career thus far. That house measures just 8 by 12 feet, plus a 2.5 foot porch off the back or the front, whichever way you want to look at it. It's about 7,000 pounds, and it cost a little bit over $30,000. Today, I think that'd be closer to something like 40,000. And I've learned a lot since building it back in 1999, and that is what I hope to share with you today, how to build something like this a bit more affordably and a bit more efficiently for a more efficient product in the end. There are a lot of ways to build, but I'll be just talking about one that's worked particularly well for me and is particularly easy and efficient. I clicked. Thank you. All right. So this is actually the house I live in right now. I'm showing it at this point, not because I'm going to talk much about it right now, but it is it's the genesis for all the building processes that I'm going to be mentioning after this slide. And in fact, the footprint of it is exactly the same as the prototypes that I'll be speaking of. So there it is, my 7 by 8 foot house, no bathroom or kitchen. It's intended for use with shared amenities like a bathroom and kitchen. But it's also built for add-ons, and I'll get to that in a bit as well. Thank you. Okay, here's the house that I set out to build with my friends Johan Morgan and Michael Collins back in 2018. Actually, just about a year after I finished building that house I just showed you, the house I still live in. We were really interested in making, I'd gotten something very efficient, and we figured we'd like to see how efficient we could actually get it in terms of not only use of materials, but labor and money. So here, what you're seeing is, it's obviously unfinished, but it's not as far from finished as it may look. This structure at this point actually supports a 140-pound guy, that's me, standing on a ladder, leaning on the roof. It's also watertight and pretty much ready for whatever kind of siding or finish material one would choose for it. At this point, actually, it only cost about $500. It's comprised of 13 pieces of 2-inch thick foam board stuck together with spray foam and some bamboo skewers, the kind you use like for a barbecue. That's pretty much all the materials we had to use at this point. We did then eventually have to add windows and a door, but that came a bit later. And interestingly, at this point, it's only 89 pounds, which is why I could lift it over my head pretty easily. You can see it's actually resting at the back end on a couple ladders. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to balance it very well. This is a still from a video we made in this salvage yard / petting the zoo / makerspace that we were building the prototype in. And a bunch of people helped out in cutting up the foam and gluing it together. That only took about 16 hours up till this stage. And it was a lot of fun. It was very easy. And this could stand, well, with the window and door, it could stand as a freestanding structure on its own. Let's see, the doors and window added a bit of money. They added about, they brought the cost closer to $700 in total for the structure. So that would be everything one would need to dry it in. I guess that's if you don't mind having tinfoil finishes. And I should mention here, I was just reminded of this, but it turns out having foil-faced foam board in your walls is a great Faraday cage. It guards against EMF. I get horrible cell phone reception in my house, but I step outside and the reception's great. So apparently it's good for keeping out the electromagnetic frequencies. And sometimes that's good, but when I want to make a call, that's not so good. So I'll be describing a few variants that we used when finishing this off, or could have used anyway. The first of those is, well, you just get a few aluminum poles to create an endoskeleton, or a skeleton around the exterior of the structure, and drape some tailored fabric over that, and you've got yourself an insulated tent. That tent would stay right around 70 degrees when a sustained temperature of 0 degrees outside is maintained, with nothing more than a very small space heater and the body heat of the occupant's body. Interestingly enough, I thought I thought I'd come up with this fantastic heater that runs off one candle. For quite a while, I was pretty proud of myself until I realized that probably most of how I heat my house is really just my own body heat. The candle looks nice and it does a bit of heating as well, but it's really all about the body heat. Michael and Johan and I mostly wanted to figure out how we could build a totally fireproof house for this part of the country, fire country. Here in Sonoma County, we get a lot of fires. They're pretty scary. So Michael is a whiz with ceramicrete. He knows pretty much everything there is to know about magnesium oxide and compounds composed of magnesium oxide and other aggregate or other materials like concrete in this case. We went out to Home Depot, bought some a mix of MgO, magnesium oxide, with concrete, put it on a piece of 2-inch foam board, and then started testing. This is Michael standing over a fire to see if the heat would go through. This is more like gimmicky than anything else. Of course, it wasn't a very scientific test, but we did use that blowtorch that he's holding there. Held it up to the foam board and it was fireproof for about a full minute before we started seeing a little bit of smoke coming out of a little hole that had gotten burned. So it's pretty darn good. It would stand up against a wildfire. These wildfires we're having here are pretty weird. They're more like microwave heat. And magnesium oxide is really good for guarding against that too. So the blowtorch was involved with the testing. We also used a throwing axe, had a lot of fun throwing the axe at the house, seeing if it would go through the wall. It took quite a few throws before we actually got it to stick in the wall. So it was more or less a bomb-proof house. This is my friend Johan, who I mentioned. You can see here the process of putting the bamboo skewers into the edges of the foam board before sticking it all together and using some spray foam adhesive. Johan and Michael were really fun to work with. In fact, it was a makerspace. I say it was also a petting zoo because there were a lot of animals running around there, including all of us maker types, a lot of very smart, brainy people doing all sorts of innovative things at that time, at that place. This, I must admit, is not the job we did on the house. It is photoshopped because I failed to get any good photos of the house once we'd finished putting the MgO on. Our version was a lot lumpier than this. I've seen a lot of pros create stuff like this. The problem with MgO, if it could be called a problem, is that it's so fast when it's curing. It cures so fast that it's hard to get it smooth before it starts getting hot and hardening. That's what ceramicrete does. It's actually a chemical process. It's a lot of fun. We had to put ice into the mix because we were working in the summer and it was just hardening way too fast for our skill set. I should say that MgO added about 1,100 pounds to the house. It was monolithic, meaning that there weren't any seams in the MgO. It went inside and out through the windowsills. We eventually added windows and a door. The total added up to about 1,100 pounds and cost about $1,000. So it's very affordable and very quick and easy for anyone wanting to build a small structure to live in. And I think the primary advantage is really just the fact that you don't need to know much of anything to do this stuff. Okay, this picture here is actually the process of building my house that I still live in today, 6 years later. It's largely the same as that prototype that we built a year later, but it's more like a hybrid of SIPS panels and wood framing, because I did put an occasional stud through the foam board The reason I minimized that, and the reason why I didn't have any in the prototype you saw, is because I was trying to get away from thermal bridging. Thermal bridging happens when you've got a something interrupting the insulation. So at a stud, for example, the cold air or hot air would pass through that a lot more easily than the rest of the insulation. So just experimenting with that. It's worked out pretty well. The weirdest thing about my house is that it's actually framed. The frame is the interior cabinetry. So you can see in this photo of the interior that there are two closets flanking the doorway. Those, for example, are like columns, way overbuilt in the sense that they do more than enough to hold up the loft floor and the roof on top of that. Every corner has a bit of framing as trim. So basically what I did was just built a wood floor, built the cabinetry on top of that, which is also the framing, glued and clamped the foam board to the exterior of that, put the loft floor on, a wood loft floor, put the rafters on top of that, more foam board on the rafters, glued it on, clamped it down, and then put on the finished materials. Obviously, there's a door involved and some windows too, but the whole thing cost me only $3,000. And it's less than 2,000 pounds. That was largely because the very affordable trailer I bought to put it on had a maximum capacity of 2,000 pounds. So I had to keep it super light. You'll sometimes see me saying that this cost $5,000. I'm saying that because if you were to get the materials new rather than just dumpster diving for materials, that's about what it costs. I don't want people to be too surprised by the cost. In fact, today, 6 years later, in this economy, it's probably closer to $6,000 to build something like this. Once again, it's not. I'm not a finished carpenter, so making these cabinets and all look nice took me a long time, but it wouldn't have to. Other than that, it's a very simple process and very quick. Here's another photo, just another angle. The whole thing is just, the interior is only 49 square feet, which is considerably smaller than a jail cell. But, I figure I don't really understand the laws around this, requirements for a bedroom size being 70 square feet with a 7-foot ceiling when the primary purpose of that room is to lie down and go to sleep. My entire house is basically a bedroom, actually 2 bedrooms because there is a bed up in the loft as well. And it feels like more than enough space for me. I mean, like I've said from the beginning, the outdoors really becomes your living room when you're living in such a small space. So I go in here to sleep and watch Netflix, and turns out I do a lot of my work in the bed, even though I had really built that really low, small desk for the purpose of working. Turns out one's lap is very good for a laptop. And that is what I've been using. Most of the documentation of my houses that I like best is not even my own documentation. This is Bryce Langston from New Zealand. He and his partner put out a great podcast called Tiny House, Big Living. So they visited my house, and this is him. The house is almost big enough to fit him, as you can see here. He's 6'4" tall. And I should say that actually once he was fully inside the house, he was relieved to see that he could in fact fit while standing up all the way. Bryce is great. I really do recommend his show because he's a design fan. So, well, if you're a design fan, if you're a design geek like me, check it out. Okay, so I want to mention the bathroom kitchen situation because my house was designed, like I said, for shared amenities. That being said, I also designed an add-on for it so that if I moved off into some place where I didn't have a shared bathroom and kitchen, I would still have my own place to cook and use the bathroom. This is one variation on that. It's not actually the add-on I designed. It's just a lean-to on the back. I'm purposefully not showing you what's behind the tarp because it's a complete mess. I still haven't even cleaned the kitchen, and I started building it like a year ago, so the kitchen is not my friend. But it is nice to have a place back there for all my stuff and to be able to heat up stuff, and there's a little fridge too. So that's I added on that kitchen for less than, I'd say it was definitely less than $100. I'll mention that I wound up in a sticky situation about a decade ago and was short on money, had about $5,000 in my pocket, was living on the streets for a bit. $3,000 of that went into building this house, and I can't think of a better way to spend $3,000. It's really paid off in spades. The extra $100 for the kitchen didn't seem like much either. This is a photoshopped image of my house with the bump out, which would be added later, that would contain a kitchen and bathroom. I actually use just 1/4 inch thick by 3.5 inch wide bender board, which is usually used in gardens to bend around flower beds and whatnot to be curvilinear. I use it, of course, because it's very light, and I didn't want to overload that trailer of mine. I barely managed to fit everything on there without overloading it. So it has worked out quite well. I haven't had to move it much yet, so we'll see how that goes when the time comes. It's on a trailer that was only $1,000, so it's a great deal. There is another thing I do want to talk about here, which is one of my favorite subjects, actually. It's the subject of what the future holds for tiny houses. The role of tiny houses in the future, I don't think it'll be all that much different than it has been from the get-go. The tiny house movement was really created to address the foreseeable housing crisis that loomed near, and just the ridiculousness of American building codes that prohibit efficient design. It's more or less it has been more or less a form of civil disobedience. So, well, generally civil disobedience requires breaking laws. But I think it's important to note here, because I didn't realize this in the beginning, but tiny houses are actually legal so long as your structure is as safe and as efficient as what code, the standard that code prescribes, then it's legal. You don't have to meet all the provisions of the code to do that. And the code sets a pretty low bar for all the verbiage it has and whatnot. It's not hard to beat when you're building a small house, because a small structure is actually inherently smaller, stronger. Just think of a shoebox versus a refrigerator box. The shoebox is probably going to endure throwing it across the room at the wall. The refrigerator box, your foot will just go right through it when you kick it. So building small with simple shapes is great for earthquakes and high winds and whatnot. And in terms of efficiency, it's funny how the code really does skirt around size as the primary way to be efficient. It actually prescribes a lot of minimum size standards. So you'll find requirements for room size, and some of them make sense, but most of them are untested, and for that matter, untestable. You can't really test room size for safety so much until you get extreme, because it has very little to do with safety. So provisions within the code that deal with such things are actually not operable as law, and the preamble to the code explains as much in very verbose ways. It's basically legalese, and a lot of the enforcers who actually enforce the code, including those who I interviewed for my book back in 1999, don't quite understand that, because, well, it took me about 20 years to figure out the code and how to work, how it is that they get away with it, putting in all these prescriptions for more stuff. The code, by the way, is designed by industry. A lot of the prescriptions in the code are actually very convenient for those who make them, in the sense that they sell a lot more materials. So the future, I think, seems a lot like the past, but more of it. the tiny house movement has managed to get a few of these provisions of the code abolished, and thank God the worst ones are gone, but there are plenty more to get rid of after this. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I'll show you the next image too, please. There we go. So yeah, we've abolished a few of the codes, but there are a lot more to be gotten rid of. And I think the future of tiny houses and their effect on society really hinges a lot on the way our political climate goes in the United States anyway, and worldwide for that matter. Constitutional law has really been ignored to a large extent in recent years, past couple decades. And constitutional law is what makes tiny houses legal. In fact, it makes a lot of things legal that might seem illegal from the get-go because it preempts all state and local laws that don't actually comply with the preemptive laws in the Constitution. So if the Constitution is actually adhered to, which it seems, at least nominally speaking, it will be for a while, and one can call on it for a while, hopefully for quite a while. Tiny houses are already legal and serve as, I believe, the best solution to the housing crisis that we've been looking at for a long time now globally. The crisis is actually manufactured by the laws that seem to prohibit smaller houses that are efficient and affordable. And I believe that building efficiently, I mean, you really could just interchange the word efficient for tiny. Efficient houses are really the way out of this mess. And as we gain more traction in terms of zoning allowing for them and codes allowing for them, it seems that we've already made a big dent in the crisis, and will continue to do so in the future. This image is one that I photoshopped it. It's my dream of a village. I have hundreds of dreams of a village with a common house and little houses, more or less freestanding and dependent on the shared amenities. Some of the designs are with freestanding houses with their own amenities, but this will be, I believe, part of the future too. High density clusters of houses like this. And for that matter, of course, apartments are even more efficient because you're sharing walls and whatnot. I think the appeal of the freestanding houses is mostly just that they're so iconic, and people love an iconic little house they can call their own. But the apartments and the freestanding stuff is really going to be a part of our way out of the housing crisis. I'm nearing the end of my actual structure. I have a lot more I could say about how to build a small, affordable, or for that matter, any kind of, not any, but many kinds of tiny houses. And I'm hoping that questions might be, it seems like yes, there are questions, thanks, Lynn. There are questions, and
Now, Deb said something, please see my Q in the Q&A. Where's the Q&A?
Q&A. Oh yeah, DC. Yes. Here's to civil disobedience. Please see my Q in the Q&A. I guess this must be the Q&A, isn't it?
No, this is the chat.
Oh yeah. Also, a tiny house on a trailer can be moved out of the path of extreme weather. Thanks for reminding me of that one. There's so many advantages to building smaller and more efficiently. Here in fire country, last time we had a big fire, smoke everywhere, by the way. The materials they use in housing these days, especially the insulation. The insulation turns to hydrogen cyanide gas, also known as Cyclone B, which was used by the Nazis to do a lot of harm back in Nazi Germany. And that is a large part of what we're breathing in when the smoke is filling our lungs during these fires. What I was going to say, though, is that you go out on a smoky day in Sonoma County, what you see along the roadsides is a lot of tiny houses on wheels parked along the side of the road or in people's driveways or wherever. Because people have escaped from the wooded areas in their houses. They were once hiding there, I guess. Maybe they weren't, maybe they were permitted, I don't know. But they got out, and the larger houses, of course, didn't necessarily get out. But that is a good point.
So where's the Q&A? Or
Do
maybe,
you guys know where the Q&A is? Anybody out there?
or
You could put it in the comments.
yeah, Deb, you could put it right in the chat.
It's good to see people responding to this. I never really think talking at a bunch of pixels on a flat screen is ideal in terms of presenting. It feels a bit, I wonder if anybody's paying attention. Yeah.
Possible to see people's faces?
Can I see people's faces?
Is it possible to see the
I know that
other participants?
I think,
Left of the chat.
oh, thank you.
Participants. We see participants.
Would that be it?
Um,
Oh, I see.
I'm not seeing.
Oh yeah, we could just go
Q&A.
to the screen where we don't have to show the images anymore necessarily. So show webinar maybe? Would that be it? I'm trying to advise
Yeah,
Linton, who knows tons more about any of this stuff than I do.
I'm learning. So
There I am.
we stopped sharing. And
There's Nick Mosley's name. Oh, whose name?
yeah, I'm wondering if it's possible for us to see everybody's windows. Right now, there's 33 participants, and we only see 3 windows essentially.
Yes.
Well, you don't have to join. Of course, you're not necessarily in a state to be seen, but if the Zoom meeting as it's being run right now is only showing us 4 little windows, 4 people, essentially 4 Zoom participants. So tiny house, is it possible to see all the participants? So that's a question.
No, we can't have them like come on the screen. I mean, we can do it individually, kind of like one by one. So if somebody's wanting to jump in here, I can promote them to where they can share their screen or share their mic if they'd like.
Oh, come on, you guys. I'm not even wearing pants here. It's like, you feel like you're not ready for the screen, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. Actually, I keep my camera off a lot of the time when I do this kind of
Well,
stuff.
there's somebody that you want me to
Oh,
promote.
there's Q&A now.
There's Q&A.
I can.
We're good, I think.
We couldn't see it before when we were sharing our screen.
There we
but
go.
Now it's showing up, the Q&A. Great.
Linton's doing great work here.
Oh, yeah, sure.
These
Okay.
buttons all. Yeah,
Okay.
so
These are Q&A. There's a question.
obviously I was really abbreviating a lot of stuff as I went. Although that foam board house with the tent fabric over the top really isn't much of a process. It's just mostly sticking a bunch of foam board together with bamboo skewers and spray foam, and then eventually cutting it with some kind of endoskeleton, either aluminum or perhaps wood, and then covering that with the fabric. Which
So
one?
there's the question from Deb. I don't know if other people can see it. If not, we could read it.
Oh yeah, right.
Read it?
Okay, I get the
Question
gist
is-
of it in the first sentence, I believe, up against unconstitutional building codes. Yeah, I'm not sure what the legal history is in terms of wins and losses and like around constitutional issues. To be a little bit more specific about that, and I'll get to the second paragraph of your question in a second, but already I'm thinking about the term, the legal term, deprivation of right under color of law. And that is essentially what an enforcer would unfortunately be faced with, a charge they might be faced with if they're enforcing one of the provisions in any deprivation of right, then that would actually be a felony. The code itself and most state constitutions and local constitutions hand off the responsibility, the liability, legal liability to the enforcers, police, building inspectors, all these people, by saying in their preludes that no code or no provision herein will be operable as law if it's in conflict with the Constitution. So unfortunately, it does put inspectors and the boards who might review a case in the building department, if there's any conflict, it puts all those people in a bit more, at a bit more risk than seems warranted to me anyway. Your second paragraph, forgive me for a moment, I'm going to read this. Oh. Oh, yes, thank you, Deb. You bought my book. I'm the one you're the one who I crossed out that stuff, and yeah, got it. Thank you. I love you. Thanks for buying my book. Yes, everybody do that, please. We'll get to that information in a moment. Yes, there's a link somewhere here. Another question? Deb is very active and helpful. Is this? Oh, Ben, what design programs do I like to use? Oh, that's easy. Pencil, paper, grid paper, and eraser. I think when it comes to creating a design, for me, it has to remain really fluid. In the end, it's nice if I don't have to hand off a bunch of drawings that look like they were created by a fourth grader, a crazy fourth grader. Lynn knows this because he's seen all my crazy drawings for his house that I'm building.
Sometimes scribbled on the insulation itself.
Yes, pieces of wood, insulation, all that stuff. But in the end, I'll hand it off to somebody to transfer into something like AutoCAD or even SketchUp or whatever looks pretty. I often actually use Photoshop too, as I've said, to make pretty pictures of a house before I finish building it. Although in the end, I just take a picture of the house and put that up. So programs, whatever's flexible, whatever suits one's needs for keeping the process fluid, changing things very quickly. Is this all the questions or comments?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like, because that's from 11:25.
Okay, good. I'm happy to see that Nick Mosley is here. I don't know. I would love to speak with Nick sometime soon. I know that that the organization that creates codes has actually been, one of the things that's happened that gets a bit confusing and a little frustrating for me anyway, is just that the term tiny house has now been adopted as a legal term by the organization that creates the codes, or the primary code in the United States anyway, the International Residential Code. And the structure that is prescribed under that term tiny house is considerably smaller than what houses typically have been in the past, and for that matter are, but it's still really unnecessarily inefficient and still contain, the provisions aren't necessarily constitutional. So when a region like a city, county, or a state says tiny houses are legal now, they almost invariably just mean that they will accept a house that complies with all those provisions in that tiny house, what's called section Q of the code. It's way, way better than what we used to have. But again, any provision that doesn't have anything to do with health, safety, and general welfare for the public is not operable as law. It's more or less just a recommendation. In the introduction to the code, it does say the code was designed not only for safety and health and general welfare, but also for comfort and things like that. And those are the places where it probably shouldn't be meddling, because I think the market should really be determining, market and the designers who design for the market should be determining how big a house needs to be comfortable, because that is going to vary depending on a lot of people's varying tastes and needs. I'm gonna go back up here. Oh, yes. There are a lot of things. I don't do scripted material very well at all. I never do it. But today I've done it a bit because there are so many numbers that I'm not going to remember. And I want to make sure I hit everything. I know I didn't, because I kind of skimmed a bit in the middle there. I guess I should probably get back to that foam board structure. It's now sitting down in Alameda. Alameda is where we built it, at the petting zoo / makerspace. And it is ready. I believe it's still there at the Solid Yard makerspace. And it's just sitting there. So if somebody wants a shell and you're in this area, please contact me or, well, Michael Collins, who's in Mexico. Huh?
How do people contact you?
Oh, how do people contact me? This is the kind of important information that I rarely think of saying. I think there's a link to my, yeah, there is a link to my website through this, through tinyhouse.com. And in case you don't see that, it's J Shafer Designs at, what is it anyway? So I always
Your
forget.
Gmail?
You remember?
Yeah, jschaferdesigns at Gmail.
At Gmail. That's my email address, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's how you contact me directly through email.
Make sure.
Yeah, that's what my email address is. And that in fact would be a great way to do it. Don't even, you don't have to go through the website. My website's still being constructed by Linton. But yet to do that. Ceramcrete is Michael Collins' specialty. If you have any questions about how to mix something that's rock hard when it dries, when it hardens chemically, he is actually, I believe, the world's leading expert on MgO, magnesium oxide. He's been researching it for years, and that's why, in fact, we got involved with Michael so that he could advise and help out with that part of that project. There are a few other applications for the foam board house that would work well. Lately, I've been doing designs for, I have a bunch of new designs that I'm about to release within the next 3 months or so. And most of those are easily transformed from something that looks like a house, usually gabled, sometimes modern with a flat roof, but usually can be modified very easily to fit inside a box truck, or be the box truck box, or be disguised as a utility box, or be buried or hidden easily. Clandestine cottages is sort of the idea there. Because so many enforcers still, and so many local municipalities still feel like they can crack down on people living in smaller houses. It sometimes just pays, in fact, more than one enforcer I've spoken to says, please just don't tell us about what you're doing here. Do it like everybody else and do it under the radar. Because it's a bit of it's a hassle for them, not just a hassle, a bit of a risk. So what better way to disguise your house than as a bush or a utility box, or as a truck, or as a large AC unit on a roof. I haven't tried that one yet, but it seems like it might be a fun idea, penthouse style. Ideally, we won't have to do, one shouldn't have to do that because, like I said, tiny houses are legal so long as it's as safe and efficient as what the code prescribes. I'm gonna look back at these questions again. Oh, here's one. A new one just came in too. Thanks. Oh yeah. I love it when people just ask the right questions and they always seem to be right.
Read the question.
Yes.
Can the rest of you see these questions, or are you seeing them?
I'll read it.
Yeah.
Jay, are you designing tiny houses that have attachable decks with extended roofs that can be removed and transported inside the tiny house while being towed? Funny you should ask. Yes, I am in fact designing most houses now with big decks around them to expand the amount of usable space. And overhangs that can be attached. The thing about tiny houses, oh, by the way, thanks Linton for reminding me with hand signals. Linton's house that I'm designing actually has a gabled roof at 12 foot wide, plus an 8 foot tall wall. You end up with a roof that's about, well, a little over 6 feet, including the thickness of the roof. So it's not going to go down the road very far before it hits something. For that reason, I have built a hinged roof where the gables fold down and the gabled ends fold down underneath those as well. The problem is not only height, but width with a portable house. 12 feet is maxing it out pretty much. It costs not too much to get a wide load permit for that. At 8.5 feet wide, you can move a house or a load for free. It's a normal load. At 10 feet, you don't have to pay much at all for a permit, something like $150 for a year in each state you're going to move it through. And at 12 feet, it's a bit more than that, but you can always remove eaves, and that is what I'm designing now. Thank you for, I don't know, maybe you knew that, Deb. Maybe I've talked to you about that, but thanks for prompting me in any case.
Yeah, and the porch on ours is gonna be removable.
Yeah, the porch is going to be removable. In fact, the porch on my tiny house is removable. It just made it, well, so it could fit on the cheap trailer I bought.
Transport it inside, she's saying transport it inside. This
The
one
tiny
that you're
house.
building would have to be in the back of a truck or something, the one that,
Yeah, also good point. You can put it in the back of the tow vehicle. I often just rent, I never have bought a tow vehicle to move tiny houses. I just rent a truck every time I have to move a house. And that is where I put things like porches and eaves and things when I'm towing the house around. The height, by the way, in case you don't know, is 13.5 feet will get you under most any bridge on a major roadway in the United States. As you get farther east, they get down very close to that. And if you don't keep your house level when you're towing it, as I didn't way back when, you might rip off the roof. Luckily for me, all it does is rip off the metal ridge cap at the very top. And I did not realize this until I got to my destination, 500 miles down the road. I realized I ripped off the roof, that part of it. So gotta be careful of that stuff. Out here in California, you can go a lot taller because the bridges here are much bigger. I see Nick Mosley's name on there. I'd love to get a question from him. Actually, I probably have questions from him. Sadly, I can't formulate them too quickly. I'm reading. Oh, yes.
there's more chat here that I didn't see.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Lots more chat. It seemed a bit sparse to me. Oh, good. Yes, this is the
okay.
bulk of it.
Going back. Say more about how the laws are changing.
The laws are changing. In fact, that section, that appendix Q is being changed, or maybe it's already been changed by a few people from the tiny house movement. They're in there helping out.
Now, there's someone asking if
Including,
they
I
can,
believe, Nick.
so DC is asking if they can come on mic.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind at all if they're still around. DC is primary question asker. I'd love to have her on.
So
Can we
that
do
would be
that?
for a tiny house to allow, because we don't have control over who can get.
Yes.
Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and let them come on.
Like magic.
Who. That's Deb Chandler.
Debbie Chandler.
There we go.
Hey, you guys.
Hi, Deb.
Hi.
It's good to hear
I
from you.
didn't know that I would have this opportunity. This is great.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good to hear you.
Yeah. No, I've been, just dealing with other things in life, but I am planning on creating a tiny house village. And, these constitutionality questions are very live for me. And I want to move forward and possibly, ahead of time, find an attorney who's willing to work with me on the
Yeah,
constitutional aspects. And that's why I was asking the questions that I did too.
yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's taken me a couple decades to figure out what the code's really doing when it comes to prescribing things that aren't supposed to be prescribed by law.
Right.
And it would, having an attorney around for that purpose would presumably save one a lot of headaches.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
if the local building department and zoning departments are forward thinking, and a lot of them are now. A lot of people, the old guard of those who just crack down on everything seems to have more or less disappeared to some extent
Mhm.
anyway. They can see the merit In fact, a lot of them were actually raised on tiny houses because, well, they did come out like 20 years ago. And they're fans. So oftentimes it's not hard to work with them. In fact, quite often they're excited. If you need any help with the tiny house village, I would love to help out in terms of design.
I would love that, because as you can see, my questions about the detachable parts and pieces, it's just, I get excited about the idea of designing things like that, and I would absolutely love to talk with you further.
Yeah, well, I've got like 100 designs and a few hundred tiny house designs, and I'm always wanting to change. The problem is I just designed some, I've got this pile of paper, like I never even post most of them because I'm
Yeah.
changing.
No, I'm a graphic designer by trade, but when I was in school, I did a lot of the industrial design and architecture too, and it's all, design is design, right? Whether
Yeah.
your training is in 2D or 3D, it's just, if you have a design brain, it applies in so many areas.
Yeah, it's all the same principles. It's all just composition in the end. If all the parts fit together and are functioning for the whole, it works. If not, then it doesn't work at all.
So,
Well, in the other aspect for me, I was listening to Ben Garrett. Was he right before you?
He was,
And
I only saw the tail end.
yeah, I'm glad that I bought my VIP ticket so I can go back and listen again to all you guys, because he was talking about the healthy aspects to the building, because I do have environmental illnesses, and other people have heard me talking yesterday and today about the EMF sensitivity, and I also have the MCS, the chemical sensitivities. So
Oh,
all that incorporated with the good design.
yeah.
And I asked Ben, does he know anyone in New England that has one of his houses? And he said, yes, there's somebody in Maine. I'm going to connect with him over that, because I just want to go see one and to see exactly, how they did that part of it too.
Yeah, it's not hard to beat the mainstream industries housing in terms of health.
Yeah.
Large part of the problem is, I see this all the time when you drive by a building site and it's just getting rain poured on an open, unsheathed, not dried in structure. All that
Yeah.
wood, sometimes other stuff is getting wet, and there's going to be mold. So mold is almost invariable in American houses, unless
Yeah.
they're built in a factory where they're kept dry, or they're so small like mine where you can put a tarp over them or
Mm-hmm.
build them quickly during the dry season and not worry about it at all. So the
Yeah.
mold thing is big. And also, I think that some kind of foam board, as long as it's inert, and you would be able to test that better than I, because you just breathe on it and you would know.
Right. Right.
But fibrous materials in the wall for insulation can be problematic if you don't have the right kind of vapor barrier, because the moisture gets in there and condenses, and that's where mold forms as well, and rot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just like to use foam board to get around that problem entirely, because it's a bit complicated in terms of where the moisture is going to come from and which way to put the vapor barrier on. So
Right. Right.
lots of
So
MgO, by the way, is a great one for interior walls and whatnot. Magnesium oxide. It's actually a carbon sink, so it's great. It's way better than drywall.
excellent. And I'll just put it out there. I don't know what my time limit is here. Somebody can tell me, but a lot of what I also want to do is make it very affordable, because I'm already disabled, by these environmental illnesses. And there are a lot of people like me
Yeah.
who are homeless. And I heard you share as part of your story, Jay, that you lived on the streets, literally living out of my car, tent camping, and right now I'm pet sitting, if you can hear the dog in the background, and realizing there are a lot of us who need to build a tiny house as affordably as possible, and possibly get the financing. And there's a huge challenge with that, as well as the legality of it all. So I do
Yeah.
want you to note for me.
Yeah, as you can see, the methods I've shown here are really designed for that, because that really is probably I believe the most pressing issue in terms of housing these days.
Yeah.
We've
Yes.
just kind of swept people aside for a while, thinking that would work. now that homelessness is the new black and becoming bigger every day,
Mhm, mhm.
and multiple chemical sensitivities and EMF sensitivities, because all
Yep.
that stuff's adding up,
Yep,
overexposure happens. All of that
absolutely.
stuff is important, and it's all easily addressed. So long as the code can keep up with reality, we're good to go. Otherwise,
Well,
we have to build structures that are safe and efficient
yeah,
and whatnot, and then just be like, well,
exactly.
this is
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Now,
Because it comes to
sorry to interrupt.
please.
Do you know, I know the answer. Do you know which state has legalized the movable tiny houses at the state level? There's only one state so far.
I think it's California, right?
Nope. I think
Uh,
California just has several counties. No, it's the state of Maine.
Really? I had no
Yeah.
idea. I can't
A lot
keep
of
up.
people don't, yeah, even people here. I wonder how many people here knew that. Yeah, so I live in Massachusetts, but we're working on a bill where it's dragging through our legislators because that's what they're good at. But Maine already approved them 3 years ago. And again, this whole question of the constitutionality and all that, we could go on, and I won't take the time now. But um, my understanding is there are no, this is another thing I'm up against that I would love it if I'm the first. There are no full-time movable tiny house villages anywhere in the Northeast for full-time residents.
Interesting. Well, it's
I
time
know.
to move to Maine then, I guess, and build some
Uh,
villages. Yeah, I even
exactly.
designed one on a barge.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's
All
coming
right.
close to the end, and I don't want to cut into anybody else's time.
All right. Thank you so
So,
much for sharing.
thanks, Deb. I'm sorry for to those of you whose comments I haven't gotten to. Um, I'm really happy you've all been here. I really appreciate it. And thank you. And feels like I should do something special to say goodbye, but I
Yeah,
guess I'll just say
you
goodbye.
gotta do a dance. What's up, Jay?
Hey, thanks
Thanks
for coming
for
back.
oh yeah, for sure. Thanks for jumping in, doing the presentation, and even answering questions and all that good stuff. And yeah, really appreciate it. And I think for a nice goodbye, you got to stand up and do some sort of dance jig or something, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's my specialty. All
Yeah,
I do is design houses and dance.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, there we go. Yeah, well, we really, really appreciate you taking the time to jump in here, Jay, and sharing with us. You're welcome to stay around and join and listen to what Nick's got to share after this or whatever you want to do. But yeah, really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Oh yeah, next. Thank you so much. I love being here. This is great thing you've got going on.
Good, good. Well, we love having you on, so we really appreciate it.
All right, great. Me too. Bye.
All right, we'll see ya. Bye bye.